All right, so you guys know we like to go deep on this show, but this time we're diving into uncharted territory. Our source material, fiction.
A first for us.
A first indeed.
Yeah.
We're cracking open The Devil's Emissary, this wild ride penned by Martin Francom.
Intriguing choice.
Right. You've armed us with the first 8 chapters and about the author, which, let me tell you, is a story in itself. Yeah, but first things first.
Yeah.
This book, it throws you right into the fire, no warm-up. We're talking shadowy conspiracies, spiritual showdowns, the works.
Right.
But it's how Francom sets the stage. That's what gets me.
You're talking about that opening scene in the Oligarch study.
Dude, yes. It's like, picture this, right? You've got this oligarch George, powerful, successful, sipping expensive whiskey by a roaring fire. The whole scene screams wealth, influence, you know.
I can practically see it.
But then, bam, Francom pulls the rug out from under you.
The devil.
The devil himself.
Yeah.
Just lurking in the shadows. Talk about a mood killer. It's like, behind all that luxury and power, something way more sinister is brewing.
And the way Francom describes him, the devil, I mean. Those eyes, like miniature sulfurous pits, the way the shadows seem to cling to him, it's masterful. You can practically feel the temperature drop.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Gives me chills just thinking about it.
And this contrast, right, this juxtaposition of the ordinary with the absolutely terrifying, it's not just about creating a creepy vibe. It speaks to this deeper tension that runs through the entire story. This battle between good and evil that's playing out not just on a global scale, but within the oligarch himself.
You know, it's funny you mention that. Because when you flip to this about the author section, you find out Martin Francom, the guy writing about devilish pacts, he wasn't always crafting these dark, mind-bending narratives.
Really?
He was a pharmacist. And get this, a programmer. Talk about a plot twist. It makes you wonder, right? What leads a guy from the world of science and logic to writing about, well, this?
It's a fascinating journey. From the concrete to the abstract, from the world of formulas and algorithms to exploring the darkest corners of the human psyche. Maybe that's what gives his writing that chilling realism, you know? That unique blend of analytical thinking and creative expression.
And speaking of realism, he mentions he writes to inspire future generations. Which, after reading about the devil making house calls, I'm not sure what to make of that. But I do think it speaks to this idea that even in the darkest stories, there's this like glimmer of hope, this belief that we have the power to choose a different path.
Absolutely. And to make those choices, we need to understand the forces at play, which is where the oligarch's plan comes in. Because Francom doesn't just throw the devil at us, he lays out this blueprint, this chillingly detailed plan for how evil operates in the world, and often in the most unexpected ways.
So we've got this devil whispering in the oligarch's ear.
Right.
But honestly, it's the plan they cook up that really gets under your skin.
It's not your typical over-the-top evil scheme, is it?
Not at all. And I think that's what makes it so effective, so unsettling. It's insidious. See, instead of some blatant power grab, the oligarch, George, he goes for this subtle, almost insidious approach to world domination.
You see that reflected in the organizations he creates, right? These groups with names like Society for Family Values and Patriot Alliance. At face value, they seem like, well, positive forces.
Totally. Like, who's going to argue against family values, right? But then Francom pulls back the curtain and you see what's really going on. And it's chilling, man. It's like, take the Society for Family Values, right? They're not actually promoting genuine connection, understanding.
It's more about control.
Exactly. It's about pushing this rigid, almost archaic definition of family, one that creates division, not unity. And it makes you think, right, like, how often do we see this happening in the real world? The manipulation of language to serve a hidden agenda. Have you noticed that?
Oh, absolutely. It's a tale as old as time. You see it throughout history, this manipulation of language. It's how you sway public opinion, how you justify all sorts of, well, less than savory actions. Look at the Patriot Alliance in the book. This idea of patriotism they're peddling. It's not about love of country, it's about fear.
The classic us versus them thinking.
Exactly. You create this climate of fear, the sense that there's an enemy at the gate, and suddenly critical thinking goes out the window. People become so afraid, so desperate for security, they'll latch onto anything that promises them safety.
And that's where groups like this thrive, on fear and uncertainty. Man, Francom's good. It's like he's holding up a mirror to our own world, you know, showing us how these tactics play out in real time, right in front of our eyes.
And then he throws us another curveball with the Universal Humanity Initiative.
Oh man, don't even get me started on that one.
Here's an organization advocating for global unity, for human rights, right? Sounds good on paper, doesn't it?
Sounds great, but
But they're simultaneously working to dismantle the very systems designed to protect individual freedoms. They use these positive, hopeful words, unity, humanity, progress, to mask a far more sinister goal.
it's like they're using our best instincts against us. Like, who doesn't want a more unified, humane world, but at what cost?
And that's the question Francom wants us to ask. What compromises are we willing to make in the name of progress? It's so easy to get swept up in these grand narratives, to surrender our critical thinking when someone promises us a better future. Francom is reminding us to be wary of anyone who claims to have all the answers. And this is where his background in logic and analysis really shines through, don't you think?
Totally. He's not just telling a story, he's inviting us to think critically about the narratives we're being fed, to question everything.
Exactly. To look beyond the surface, to examine the motivations behind the message, and to remember that sometimes the most dangerous lies are those disguised as beautiful truths.
Because those seemingly harmless narratives, they can have very real, very devastating consequences. And nowhere is that more apparent than when Francom starts to peel back the layers of this perfect world the Oligarch is building and shows us the chaos simmering beneath the surface. And this is where things get real, right? Like, we see the cracks start to appear in this perfect world the Oligarch is building.
And those cracks, they become gaping chasms by the end. Francom doesn't hold back.
Not one bit. It's like he took all our anxieties, all the things we worry about in the real world, the divisions, the social unrest, the economic uncertainty, and just dialed it up to 11.
It's a bleak picture, that's for sure. But it's not gratuitous. He's not just trying to shock us, though he does a pretty good job at that.
He really does. Remember those sweat lodge visions from earlier in the book, the ones that left those characters so rattled?
Oh, yeah, those were intense.
They were like peeking behind the curtain, right? Seeing the potential consequences of this path we're on. And as the story unfolds, those visions, they start to feel less like abstract warnings and more like, well, prophecy.
And that's where Francom's skill as a storyteller really shines through. He makes you feel it, the fear, the uncertainty, the utter breakdown of society. He doesn't just tell you about the chaos. He drops you right in the middle of it.
And the way he describes it all, man, it's visceral, graphic even. Some might even say it's too much. But I don't know. I think it's necessary.
I agree. Remember what Francom said about wanting to inspire future generations? Well, sometimes inspiration comes from confronting the darkness, not shying away from it.
By showing us the abyss, he's forcing us to confront our own role in all of this, right? Like, are we going to stand by and let it happen, or are we going to fight for something better?
Exactly. And that's the question that hangs over everything. Even in the midst of all this chaos, this despair, Francom offers these glimmers of hope. The characters, battered and bruised as they are, they never completely give up. They still cling to their faith, to the belief that even in the darkest of times, there's still a choice to be made.
So it's not about blind optimism then, it's about resilience,
Mm.
about finding the strength to keep fighting, even when it feels hopeless.
Exactly. And that's where he leaves us, doesn't he? With that lingering question, will good triumph over evil? We don't know. These excerpts, they end on a cliffhanger. The final battle, it hasn't been fought yet.
Talk about leaving you wanting more, but it makes you think, right? Like, this story, it's not just about some fictional battle between good and evil. It's a reflection of our own world, our own struggles.
And the choices we face every single day.
We may not have to contend with a literal devil's emissary, but the forces at play in our own lives, the decisions we make, the actions we take, they have very real consequences.
And we can choose to be passive observers, to let those forces dictate our lives. Or we can choose to resist, to fight for the future we want to see.
To choose hope, even when it feels impossible. Maybe that's the true message of the devil's emissary, that even in the face of overwhelming darkness, we always have a choice. And who knows? Maybe, just maybe, that's enough to tip the scales. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive, and until next time, keep exploring.